Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Robert Adams, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Squadron Leader Blake Woodward. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of Neil College from Neil, Victoria, and Endeavour College from Mawson Lakes, South Australia. If you are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians to understand what these men and women had endured and what they have done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Sergeant Douglas Clive Hobden. Doug Hobden was born in Newcastle on the 13th of July, 1894, the only son of Richard and Mary Hobden. He grew up in nearby West Maitland, where he was educated at the Superior Public School. He went on to work as a clerk for the Messrs. Wood Brothers in Maitland. Doug Hobden was an active member of the Maitland Musical Society, eventually becoming its secretary. He was also an active member of St. Paul's Church of England in Maitland, particularly the choir and the Men's Society. Doug Hobden's other interest was the military. On the outbreak of war in 1914, he was serving in D Company of the 14th Infantry Militia Group. He was extremely popular in his wide circle of friends and was described as highly esteemed for his many fine qualities, both as a young citizen and as a soldier. Douglas Hobden enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force as soon as it was possible to do so in August 1914. Although he joined as a private, his military experience quickly saw him promoted to the rank of sergeant. He was joined by a number of his mates from the Maitland district. Together they were posted to the 2nd Battalion, leaving Australia on the troop ship Suffolk in October 1914. The 2nd Battalion was first sent to Egypt, where the men continued training in the desert before leaving for deployment to Gallipoli. Doug Hobden wrote home to say, "We are camped right under the famous Sphinx and pyramids, and when I go back, I'm going to get a job lecturing on ancient Egyptian history at the Technical College. The pyramids, I think, are more wonderful than ever." Hobden spent Christmas 1914 in Egypt, attending church services twice in the morning before pooling his money with his tent mates and going into town to buy Christmas dinner. Bringing it back to camp by motorcar, 2 of them remained up all night to cook it. Hobden wrote, "We had such a jolly good dinner. You should have seen all of us sitting in the 2 tents having dinner, all sitting in a ring." In April 1915, the 2nd Battalion left their camp under the pyramids and travelled to the island of Lemnos via the port of Alexandria, where they began the training for the landing on Gallipoli. The battalion landed at Anzac Cove as part of the 2nd and 3rd waves on the morning of the 25th of April 1915, having heard gunfire of the covering party's landing. Another member of the 2nd Battalion, Private Toms, later described how everyone got mixed after the landing. New Zealanders and Australians simply went with the first officers they saw. The Navy men say they've never seen anything the like, the way the Australians charged the hills. Sergeant Douglas Hobden did not make it back to the beach when the 2nd Battalion reorganised some days later. One of his mates, Gordon Chant, a 2nd Battalion man, also from Maitland, lost him during the landing. Chant later wrote, "From inquiries I made before I came away from Gallipoli about poor Doug Hobden, his men thought he was shot in the lungs. I was speaking to 2 men who spoke to him after he was shot. I don't think Hobden could speak too much then, and the men had to go on with the fighting." How long Doug Hobden survived after this is unknown, nor was his grave, if he was ever buried at all, ever identified. Today he is commemorated on the Lone Pine Memorial on the heights above Gallipoli with nearly 5,000 other names of men with no known graves or who were buried at sea. In Australia, the Maitland Musical Society put up a picture of Sergeant Hobden with the words, "A tribute of affection from the Maitland Musical Society" underneath. A memorial service was held in his honour in his church, during which the rector said, "Among the first to answer the call of duty was he whom they were honouring that afternoon. He realised his responsibilities, and of Sergeant Douglas Hobden, they could say, he warred a good warfare, holding faith, and a good conscience. He had laid down his life, and he had done nobly and well." A gold cross in the military chapel at Liverpool camp was also donated in Hobden's memory by a close friend. Douglas Clive Hobden died less than 2 months before his 21st birthday. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name, listed on the Lone Pine Memorial at Gallipoli, is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant Douglas Clive Hobden, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If you are able, I now invite you to please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, we will remember them.
We will remember them. Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, we thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.